Thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. So I've got a stack of slides. I'm sure we can share an edited version later on, and I'll be around afterwards. So I'll rattle through, and we'll go through what we've been doing, and do catch me afterwards. So I'm Andy Sutton. I'm a chartered architect by training. I did 12 years in practice. I did 10 years with the building research establishment, and then decided it was more useful to do it rather than write a report about it. So co-founded Sero with my colleague in Wales. So Wales was the first industrialised nation on earth. It feels appropriate that we're leading the charge for decarbonising as a consequence of that industrialisation. I'm going to split into three sections. The biggest bit is Optimised Retrofit, but I've got two shorter slots before, which I will try and keep to 30 seconds, to explain, firstly, what is net zero. Secondly, 30 seconds on the easy bit, and I'll tell you what the easy bit is, and you won't like it. And then thirdly, Optimised Retrofit. So firstly, what is net zero? So sustainability is a very broad topic. When we talk about net zero, we are talking about net zero carbon. And that is one slice of the wider sustainability topic, and it's important that lots of things can get hung under the banner of sustainability. When we like to try and stick to the science, we've heard about science-based targets previously, so it is important to stick to the topic you're good at, as it were, and for us, net zero carbon is what we're good at. There are three key metrics if someone tells you they're doing something that's net zero, to ask them. Firstly, have you remembered that homes have humans in them? If you're not counting the humans, you're not getting to a genuine definition of net zero by the UK Green Building Council's definition and by the one that we work to. The second of the points to check is, are you measuring your net zero carbon in carbon, or are you measuring in kilowatt hours? If you're measuring in kilowatt hours, you're not getting to net zero carbon, you're getting to net zero energy. It's good, it's not net zero carbon. You can see from the graph on the right, the translation between a kilowatt hour and a kilogram of carbon is not static. That's one day, that's actually a representative day from all the months of 2019. But in essence, if you drew 1 kilowatt hour of energy at peak time is about dinner time, you're generating roughly 2 or 3 times as much carbon as if you draw the same amount of energy overnight. So when you draw the energy, it makes a big difference. Therefore, you cannot say 1 kilowatt is equal to 1 kilogram. Therefore, if you're measuring in energy, you're not measuring net zero carbon. Those are the bad news. The good news is the other thing that we do with all the things that we're working on is we look to the future. So current regulations in England and in Wales are retro-looking. They're looking at carbon emissions on average across a year set from 2010 at the moment. What we've done is model out the carbon emissions of the national grid for the next 29 years. And then we put every home that we work with through that engine to forecast when those homes become net zero, allowing for the decarbonisation of the grid. So the first 2 points are making the problem harder, but it's more honest, it's more scientifically accurate. The last point is actually a bit of a win, because you can ride some of the journey by grid decarbonisation alongside what you're doing in homes. So it matters where you aim. If you aim at the wrong end of that table, you've got a bloody hard job to get net zero. If you aim at the right end of that table, it's a damn sight easier. So the easy bit, for those that are in new build construction, sorry, that is the easy bit. It doesn't feel like it. I know there's all sorts of reasons why it doesn't feel like it, but it is. This is 225 homes we're building with partners Pobble and Tyrian. They become net zero in the 2030s, and that's by our own definition of net zero. They're on site at the moment. This is our own scheme, 35 homes just north of Swansea. They'll be net zero the day they're built. We've gone that bit further. And they're demonstrating all sorts of other things, again, by that proper metric of net zero. And then this scheme, just to flash up again, 214 homes in Cardiff. Again, they'll be net zero slightly later in the 2030s, but still 2030s, genuine net zero, remembering the humans in there and measuring it in reality on the ground. So to help with that, we've published, it's freely available. I'm sure we can send a link if people want it, but there's a net zero specification if you want to actually know what to build. This is about 3 pages long. It talks in fairly simple U values, air tightnesses, and the amount of PV, batteries, thermal storage, etc. that you need. Build that, you'll be net zero in the 2030s. Simple, job done. Moving on. How do you pay for it? We're working with Rightmove and Monmouthshire Building Society and the RICS to understand how the value changes are coming through. Some of you may have seen the press in the last week. Rightmove finally released some work coming out of this project around the value difference that emerges. So you're starting to see genuine improvements in price as the energy performance reduces. Still using a rather crude metric of EPCs, but hey, you've got to work with what you've got. So that's producing evidence, and we're working with the RICS on the Red Book to start to capture that coming through. So lots happening, but what we're here to talk about is the retrofit bit, and this is the harder part of the journey. What we've been doing primarily in Wales, although we're rolling out in 2022 beyond Wales to support other social landlords, other landlords, and later in the year probably private owner-occupiers as well. We assembled this collaboration, around about 30 social landlords and other landlords in Wales, to tackle, by Phil's definition, 1 day's worth of homes retrofitting. The challenge overall from Welsh Government was, how do we decarbonise every social home in Wales? That's about 250,000 homes, with a view to how does that then roll on to the 1.4 million homes that are in Wales. Of course, as a B Corp business, but ultimately still a business, we were eyeing the 24 or 28 million homes across the UK and beyond as well. So that's in our pipeline. But as you can see from the numbers at the bottom, I don't know whether that's visible, 3,000 homes, round about a day worth of work, but you know, it's a good start. It's a good day's work. Some slides about money. So there's some grant involved to get this going. We're picking every type of house type we can in this first phase. So we're on site with nearly 3,000 at the moment, either in planning or going through planning, not in the planning permission sense, but planning in the planning the program sense. We've got just about every type of age, terrace, non-terrace, flat, on gas, off gas, on oil. We have got some coal, I think, you name it. We're working through all the different types across all of Wales at the moment. This will go beyond with the project in order to understand all of the different problems and challenges and get data back from this programme. We're also trying to unpick some of the other challenges. So I'll talk about how we're helping get every home on its right journey, and very much aligned with what Trustmark are doing and working closely with them wherever we can. But we've also very aware about the hints of skills and supply chain that have been touched on by Rockwool, and how we get this to help the community and how we get this to be a benefit for everyone that is going on this journey. So it is that opportunity that was talked about rather than necessarily that challenge, although not acting, of course, is a threat. So we've got lots of work happening around skills, we've got lots of work happening around financials and how that can begin to feed in. We've built a procurement framework, gosh, that was fun, and we're working on community occupancy and such like. So all of that's feeding in, but the real bit, I think, what we're doing for every home is the digital side of the tools, how to make this process quicker, how to make this process easier. So the first of the key digital elements that we've been putting together is the digital survey tool. So this is aligned with PAS 2035 that Phil's mentioned, and this is a mechanism to capture all the information that the surveyor needs to be able to know what to base their decisions about how to take that home forward on. So I'll let these run, but the key point here is we're treating every home as unique. You can look at stock models, you can do assumptions, and financial directors and chief financial officers and all that sort of thing will love to do that, and that's great. But until you've assessed that individual home, you won't necessarily be making the right decision for those residents, whether they're an owner or a tenant, and you won't necessarily understand the uniqueness of that property in its life. It's had its own journey. You've got to understand that before you can start to muck about with it. So the survey allows you to go in very quickly. You take a photograph, you tag up things in the photograph to say this is how you would recognize it, and then, you know, cloud computing these days allows us to do all these sorts of clever things in the background to understand the properties. So you quickly dash through, photograph the outside elevations, you then move in, let's get the floor plans, it's a hallway, put in the floor plans and capture this. Work through, set the orientation, of course. What this is feeding in the back end is the ability to understand the energy performance of the home and therefore the carbon performance of the home. It's building the ability to understand which types of wall options are available. It's creating the baseline, the foundation, as was talked about earlier. You've got to start from a good foundation. That's what we're capturing with this tool. And then the last of the three main steps in the survey is back to that very easy, tagging up photographs. What do you see inside? What are the issues? Mold growth, cracks, other concerns that would potentially have a detrimental effect to retrofit measures. And at the end of that process, where you get to is having a survey of the home to assess whether it's retrofit ready. Now you can stock model those, but until you've gone in, you need to know that home is retrofit ready. So you submit the survey. gives you a summary, disappears off, and you put your iPad back in the bag and cycle to your next survey. So that does that bit. Of course, you're cycling. The other way we're collecting data across all of the Optimised Retrofit program, and indeed beyond with the other projects we're working on, is we're putting a bit of kit into every home. And this is designed to capture information about the property and how it's working. So it's capturing energy data at less than 15-minute intervals. That's allowing, all of that comes back to the hub, of course, and allows us to convert energy into carbon, picking up the point, measuring carbon, that's the important one. And it allows us to understand the environmental conditions. And collectively, we can work out whether the home is comfortable for the residents. We can also advise the residents where they're spending their energy bills. Is it the teenager's shower? Is it the kids' plug-in stuff? Is it having the heating at 25 degrees? Where are they spending their money? But also, where are they causing their carbon emissions? So this is generating the largest data set on residential property energy use and carbon emissions in existence, to the best of our knowledge, and that's feeding through and informing all of the decisions that come through. So it's a bit of electrics to wire up, but and the box actually next generation is even smaller, but anyway, that comes through, it feeds the data back. Those two together give you the baseline of the property. You've got a surveyor or some form of assessor in the property, PAS 2035 aligned, of course. You've got operational energy data that can be converted to carbon at time of use from the building energy engine, and that feeds into the next decisions. And the next decision is what Trustmark have called a medium-term retrofit plan, what we call a pathway to zero. They're the same thing. We just thought our name was snappier, but hey, Phil, throw something at me. So the pathway to zero is effectively a stepped approach to how you retrofit a home from where it is to getting it to net zero. And I will rattle through very quickly with some graphics again, but I can talk about this afterwards. In essence, you load up your home, so your survey from the platform, you come in, you can find your property. I have no idea what that slide is doing. There we are loading a property. Yeah, we're loading a survey property, and then we're going to create a pathway for it. The first thing it says is don't throw out anything that's actually still got some usable life in it. And this is one of the key challenges around things like deep retrofit. You waste a lot of money if you throw out that gas boiler you only put in 3 years ago. Let it run its natural life. We are in a climate emergency, but we shouldn't be panicking. So run that gas boiler to the end of its life. Plug in that this gas boiler's got 6 years left in it. We're going to run it till then we're going to replace it with something low zero carbon. So again, elements that can be run to the end of their life, plug it in. You then, is that going to do something? Yes. You then very simply drag and drop the measures that you want to do. Now that is a wealth of cloud computing happening under there to make a very simple calculation. What we're doing with every measure that's being applied is at 15-minute intervals, the underlying energy engine that's working through into carbon is working out 35,040 energy impacts for an entire year in 15 minutes. It's converting that against the grid decarbonisation forecast in 15 minutes to work out the carbon footprint of that over the time. And it's doing that over 29 years to 2050. And it works all of that in relatively the blink of an eye. It might be a slowish blink. To run every one of those measures as it's done. And what that's doing is it's generating a zero carbon by date up in the top right. So as you deploy the measures onto the property, it looks at grid decarbonisation, it looks at the occupancy of the home and the information we've got from how that home's being run, and it's saying, right, you are on this trajectory and that's the date you get to a genuine metric for net zero. And you can then effectively keep going, and I've shortened this sequence, but you then keep, okay, 2047 is a bit late, could do with 1.5 degrees, not 2.7. Let's keep going, let's apply some more stuff. The tool will also flag where measures are inappropriate. So if you are trying to put cavity wall insulation into a solid wall construction, ain't gonna work. If you're trying to put measures on in the wrong sequence, so windows in the wrong sequence to external wall insulation, it will put you up a flag and say, this is a tricky way around to do it, you've got some awkward detailing, do you maybe want to swap them around? It guides you through that process until you get to a point where you're comfortable that you have a net zero carbon by date that is low enough for your organisation or for you as a homeowner that you're comfortable with. And you then save that through. I'm conscious I'm probably running on time, but I'm going to finish the last couple of slides. You apply the pathway, and that lands in your passport. And all of your information, whether you're a stockholder, a landlord, an authority, a social landlord, or an individual homeowner, you can have a passport which stores all this information and can migrate between ownership. So if you sell, you can pass the property data through. that will give you your zero carbon by date, that will give you all this survey information, that will give you all of the journey that you're planning on that home going on. And I will skip these because there's time, but effectively as a portfolio holder, you can see how your portfolio is navigating towards net zero, and you can see that down by different groups. You can group by community, you can group by any house type that you want to do. So you can look at, I think this shows you looking at on maps and all kinds of stuff. So in essence, what we're doing and trialling at scale in Wales is to demonstrate how this can work on the ground to engage with the, what the government calls the RMI, the repair, maintenance and improvement sector, but ultimately SMEs that can train and skill towards this and deliver it in a practical and pragmatic fashion, because we've got to do 3,000 of these a day, not 3,000 of these a year. And that is, I think, me done. The passport will be opening up this side of Offers Dyke next year, so do have a chat if you want to try it out and have a go with any of these tools, or indeed talk about what the lessons we've learned are across engaging, foundational economy, measures, everything. Please do feel free to have a chat. Thank you very much.